Aloha, and welcome to Olelo Community Media Series on the Hawaii State Department of Education's exciting strategic plan for public schools. I'm Christina Kishimoto, Superintendent of the Hawaii DOE. The 2030 Promise Plan centers on 5 promises to students to be delivered across all public schools during the next 10 years. This series features an episode on each of these promises. I'll be joined by educational leaders and students who are living out these promises in their communities, spotlighting some of the engaging and innovative learning underway today in our public schools. As the organization that graduates more than 10,000 students each year, the Hawaii DOE is the chief source of talent in the state. The aim of the 2030 Promise Plan is to harness the power and promise of public education to deliver on equity, excellence, and innovation in every school so that all students are ready for college, career, and community and can contribute to building a thriving, sustainable Hawaii. Mahalo for joining us. There are no small promises for our students.
Aloha, I'm Jill Kuramoto. I'm joined by Dr. Christina Kishimoto, Superintendent of the Hawaii State Department of Education. We're going to be talking about the Empowerment Promise, which states students will develop their authentic voice as contributors to equity, excellence, and innovation by providing input on what they learn, how they learn, and where they learn. So Dr. Kishimoto, let's talk about your perspective on empowerment.
So we've already talked about 3 other promises in prior series. We talked about Hawaii, we talked about equity, and we talked about school design. And we talked in those series about how important it is for the school-based team to be empowered to make decisions around how they organize and design their schools, how they make decisions around curricula. And so a key assumption of our entire promise plan is to empower the school, which is the teachers, the students, the principal, all of the staff with parents and community to be empowered to design powerful practices at the school-based level.
We're joined by Complex Area Superintendent Sean Tajima, who leads the Campbell-Kapolei Complex Area and is a former principal, vice principal, and special education teacher. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell me about your perspective on engaged learning.
Student engagement is first and foremost, and it starts with good leadership and passionate teachers. In comparison to when we were in school, where we took our coursework and we wanted to just fulfill their credits to graduate from high school because we're supposed to. And a lot of it was due to our parents wanting us to get an education so that we could have a better life than they did. I think times are different now, and our approach to education is really changing, where it's important to engage students in their learning and for them to really understand the why of what they're learning and not just learn for the sake of learning or do for the sake of doing. It's really to understand why they're learning what they are, how it's applicable to the life around them, and how it's going to impact their future ahead of them also. The biggest shift that captures all of it is the concept of school design that the superintendent rolled out when she came on board a couple years ago. And to me, that's the ultimate gesture of empowerment for schools. It's been quite a shift for everybody. I think when the concept was introduced, most of us interpreted it as waiting to be told what the school design was that we were supposed to implement. But after learning more about it and getting clarification, it's really the opposite, where it was a superintendent asking us as school administrators, what is your school design? The 3 questions that really revolve around that were, what is student success? How do we measure what we really value? And how do we support each child to experience success? And those are really big questions, and I know that you worded those very intentionally, and they're very different from the traditional questions on what is student achievement, which we immediately divert to our Strive High accountability and test scores. It empowers us to redefine what education is and what we're trying to do, and it's honoring the uniqueness of each school. Test scores are still important. We're not going to ignore that. Those skills are very important for student success, but it only indicates one aspect of the child. And I think as educators, we all believe in the development of the whole child. And I think allowing principals to come up with their own school design allows the uniqueness of that school to come out and flourish.
So what does it mean to implement student voice and student choice at a school?
Our school administrators use different ways to solicit student voice. Some will do it through more formal venues such as your school community council, where you have a student representative who is representative of the whole student body. One thing with a lot of our schools are involved in visible learning, and part of visible learning is to implement a survey to get the voice of all students instead of just specific groups, to look at the data and to see what kind of suggestions and input the students are giving to further improve schools. One of our principals at Evan Mackay Middle School, Principal Kim Sanders, puts her desk in the middle of the main hallway and tells students ahead of time, my desk is going to be there with me all day. I encourage you to come to talk to me. You can come to talk story, or you can also come to give me suggestions on how we can make school better. One of the big, most prominent suggestions was having microwaves in the cafeteria, so that students who bring home lunch can microwave their lunches. Speeds up the process. It allows them to have choice to purchase school lunch or bring their own. They didn't have to bother their teachers to use their microwaves. So it was a simple thing that they did, but the reception was very positive.
One of the ways in which I've seen, for example, at Campbell High, the impact of student empowerment and teacher empowerment is that the empowerment is bringing students and teachers closer together to actually design curriculum together, to design academies together. Mm-hmm. Can you give us a little bit of a summary on what's happening there? It's really powerful.
It is, and it starts with both of our high schools, Campbell High School and Kapolei High School. They both have the academy structure, which are tiered to the career pathways design. That totally lends itself to student choice because it creates a pathway for students to tap into their interests and their passions and design their academic courses to fit that, which again is very different from when we went to school, that you basically attended the courses on your schedule and you tried to fulfill the graduation requirements, where now education is catered more to student interests and student choices. So one thing that we did in Campbell Kapolei this year was we had our first ever Freshman Career Expo, 600 freshmen at Kapolei and 900 freshmen at Campbell, so about 1,500 kids. I had a Career Expo at Kapolei High School, but the purpose of that event was for kids to take an interest inventory to see what they're interested in, find a career path that may align to that. They had an opportunity to dialogue with different career partners, and it was different from the usual career fair where you have booths set up and they pick up brochures. It was a more intimate setting of maybe 3 students to 1 industry partner, where they had to prepare questions to ask. And we had that in their freshman year because in their sophomore year, they're going to choose their academy. Students may choose not to pursue those careers in the end, but we felt that part of that journey is also to find out what you don't want to do. And it's better to do that in high school than in college when you're paying money for tuition or when you started a career and have a family. So we wanted to expedite that process for students to explore and really have their education program meaningful for them, which caters their pathway to the interests that they had at that time.
Lots of forward thinking in school design. Thank you, Sean, for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
With us now is Pololo Elementary teacher Janice Locke. Pololo Elementary received a Hawaii DOE Innovation Grant to build the Center for Creative Hearts, which focuses on providing arts education to all students during the course of the school day and providing an opportunity to integrate the arts into their core curriculum. So welcome, Janice.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell us about how the Center for Creative Hearts came into being.
Well, it all started one Saturday morning where we had students, parents, and community members. We came and we got together. And the focus of the morning was to figure out what our kids wanted. And so they used a design process, created what they thought would be an ideal arts room, and they basically asked for more art. And so it was our job as a school to go out and seek those ways of art for them.
So excited because one of the things that we talked about 2 years ago was this whole concept of rolling out innovation grants.
Yes.
And so the Department of Ed set aside $1 million for teacher grants. And there were two requirements. One, that teachers work together in putting together the innovation project, the empowerment project they would like to deliver on. And secondly, that they empower student voice as part of that project design. Can you talk a little further about how teachers and students work together in that empowerment structure to put this great program together?
Like I said, that morning was spent with the kids telling us what they wanted to do, how they wanted to learn, where they wanted to learn. And arts came up a lot. And so we were able to get partnerships, build partnerships with the Honolulu Theater for Youth, Hawaii Opera Theater, Museum of Art, and now, and as well as Arts in School. And so through that, we were able to take the curriculum that was happening in the classrooms and utilize those arts. And as far as collaboration with teachers, we worked together to figure out locations, time, what the content was going to be taught before the kids actually went into the Arts Center and did the job.
Since the center opened last year, tell us about the level of engagement that you've been seeing from students.
Oh, it has been amazing. For example, with their work with the Honolulu Theater for Youth, the kids took their social-emotional learning, and so they took what they learned as far as choose love, courage, gratitude, compassion, and action, and they created scripts, and they performed for their parents and community as well for that night. We also showcase their artwork in our libraries, and we invite parents. But it has been quite amazing as far as what we see happening with the students and their change.
When I went to visit Pololo, there was a student lead in the classrooms,
Yes.
And one young man took me around the classroom, so there was instruction happening, and he introduced me to everything that was posted on the walls,
Oh, good.
and talked about all the learning that had happened, what were the lessons related to what was posted on the walls. And I learned afterwards from the teacher and the principal that this was a young man who had felt disconnected, and one way to connect him at Pololo was to have him actually take on a leadership role, a
Yes.
classroom leader role. And I've been so impressed with that engagement of kids and really pushing them to step up into leadership roles.
And it is true, because a lot of our kids are disadvantaged. And so that idea of voice was very important for them. And so giving them that opportunity to express how they feel, what's happening outside of school as well as inside of school was very rewarding for them. I saw it firsthand, because giving them that opportunity, first of all, to come up with a list of what they felt were problems in the school and try to take that creative aspect and use that to solve it and then present it to the school and their parents was very powerful. And so with the arts, I think we can continue, because I personally believe that if you can address that and give them ways to express themselves, then the actual learning can begin.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janice. In shifting greater decision-making to the school level, building capacity of educators to lead on behalf of their learning communities becomes especially important. We're joined now by Farrington High School Principal Al Carganilla, who has been working with his educators to grow a teacher leadership cadre to give more control to educators in designing professional development and curriculum to advance their learning community. And he's joined by Farrington's Vice Principal Ronald Oyama and teacher Jeremy Seitz, who leads the Engineering Academy, as well as Norman Salas, who leads the Language Arts Department and coordinated an innovative project with English learner students, a poetry book. And we'll learn more about that, so welcome.
Well, thank you for having us.
Now tell us a little bit more about the teacher leadership cadre.
Well, 6 years ago, we were focusing on trust, empowerment, and collaboration. And at that point, we were just figuring out how could we create a system that would capture all of that. So after talking to Dr. Satchwith from Brockton High School, met with her and said, yeah, let's begin to implement a teacher leadership cadre where we could build trust, empower our teachers to provide professional development to their peers, and really being creative and being bold and just really empowered to do great things. and taking collaboration to another level. So with that, 5 years ago, we ventured on establishing a TLC where our teachers had to apply for the position, and knowing that their role was to, again, provide professional development to all our staff, with the thinking that we felt that all our teachers and the expertise of education was on our campus. And instead of looking towards consultants who came over, that we would use our expertise and about teaching and learning, but more importantly sharing, so that we could really build that capacity within the classrooms and really having our teachers feel that they're the experts and they could share lessons with one another. So that's how it all started, and now 5 years in the making, it has really grown.
So Norman, I went to the book signing, and there were a group of students there signing away these books. Tell us about it.
Yeah, they were excited that night. Voice Poetry by the Youth of Kalihi is a project that our ELL team at Farrington went through last year. It's a project where we wanted our students to recognize that their multilingualism is an asset and it belongs in the classroom. We also wanted them to see the impact of them writing their stories. And we were able to do that because we believe in our students. We partnered with community organizations, and we have the support of our admin. And I am surrounded by colleagues who really believe in the idea of collaboration empowers students.
One of the incredible, I think, things that I learned and heard from the students that evening was that they don't want us to assume what their future is or what their interests are, and not to have assumptions. They feel like many of us here, as we receive new arrivals to our district, that there are assumptions based on where they're coming from, what they might be interested in, and they said, ask us.
Many of the students who are part of the project are recent immigrants, and many of them are also former or long-term language learners, and they are all culturally and linguistically diverse. So they come with a wealth of experiences and knowledge, and they are exploring, they're navigating what they want for themselves in the future. And I think we need to trust that these students have something to say about themselves, and not just assuming what is good or what they want for themselves. Because if we listen to them, they actually have big ideas, they have big opinions, and it takes a lot to really give them that space. But when we do, our students will flourish.
I heard about this World Surf League merchandising truck. Tell me about that.
We partnered with a World Surf League, which is a huge industry partner, and what we envision is getting the industry into our classrooms and having our students actually work with the industry partners and getting feedback from them and making it more relevant.
Well, one of the outcomes of an empowerment model is having industry partners work to support our school design models, and that's a great example.
We've been on this design thinking phase this year, and Jeremy just came back from Stanford University last week to learn more about design thinking, and now we're going to begin incorporating that within our school system with our faculty, and more importantly, I think, taking it down to the kids, really having empathy and knowing our clients and how we could deliver the needs for our school community.
Well, Jeremy, I want to hear your perspective on the design process then.
In anything that you do, whether it be education or engineering, you have to really know the people that you're working for and that you're working with. And I think we're at a really important time in education right now where students are beginning to have a voice, and teachers also are beginning to have a more valuable voice. And I think, you know, Mr. Carganilla here and Farrington is really taking advantage of that. We are creating experiences for the students that enable them to really feel valued and understood and heard, and they are having a say in how they learn. And I think that's really important. Also very important is that the teachers are beginning to feel like they are valued and that they are heard. And that's something that for many years was kind of a challenge for a lot of schools and teachers in Hawaii, you know. And I think the World Surf League project was an excellent opportunity for students and teachers to really work together side by side rather than feeling like one was higher or more experienced than the other. And if you ask the students, they really benefited greatly from that and felt like it was more of a strong bond and relationship than just a teacher-student relationship. And that really impacted their learning and impacted their ability to see what they could become.
Where do you see Farrington High School in the year 2030?
It's so funny because we begin kind of looking as a staff and administration how that would look like. We've talked about having our academies being nationally certified 5 years down the road, but looking forward, I think it's going to change. Jeremy talked about the student voice, about how they want to learn, so I think it's going to change from more of a differentiated type of instruction within the classroom to more personalized instruction. At our opening this year, I introduced Genius Hour, where our teachers can go ahead and look at 1 hour out of the week to look at things that they want to learn, the kids want to learn. And for engineering, if they're covering something that they're covering certain things that maybe a student wants to learn more about, that they're able to take out 1 hour out of the week to learn more about it, more project-based. So that's going to be a challenge because it's a mind shift change for our teachers. But yeah, I think down the line it's just going to be meeting the needs of our kids and a lot of design thinking and really thinking out of the box. So education will be a lot different than what it is now.
So student-led learning, that's definitely empowerment.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're joined now by teachers Eileen Carr of Manoa Elementary, Cece Chung from Kaimiloa Elementary, and Daphne Okunaga, math teacher at Pearl City High School. And they are all part of the Hawaii State Teachers Fellowship Program, which works to elevate teacher voice in the decisions that impact their schools. So thank you so much for joining us. Now tell us about why it's important that there's teacher leadership in advancing equity and excellence.
I think teacher leadership is probably one of the most important things because we have such a great group of teachers all over the state of Hawaii who have a lot to offer, a lot to share. And when teachers come together and when we collaborate and think of ideas and we take the lead on those things, a lot of great things come out of it for students. And there's been a lot of examples of that, definitely. Teacher-led conferences, teacher-led professional development, all of those things where, you know, us as teachers getting together just in a small space to come up with these ideas has really helped, I think, in a lot of schools.
So what does teacher leadership look like?
Well, in my opinion, teacher leadership is about listening to what people around you are saying, listening closely to that, and knowing that as a teacher leader, your job isn't to have a better idea than anybody else. Your job isn't to fix problems or to solve other people's problems, but to help people kind of synthesize what they're saying, to help them figure out even what their problem is as a whole, what best methods could be used to articulate it, whether it's a letter writing campaign, emails, a direct conversation or negotiation with somebody. Leadership is more about like amplifying voices of people around you and not necessarily just being the one on the microphone or having stronger, better ideas.
We've had 3 key strategies we've been focused on for the last 2 years, and we're going to focus on it for this year as well, which is the school design, student voice, and teacher collaboration. And we've been very mindful and purposeful in focusing on teacher collaboration as a way of speaking to teacher voice and teacher leadership. Do you believe that's making a change in terms of it really impacting the field, in terms of saying we are purposefully focused on teacher voice, teacher collaboration?
I think teacher collaboration has been a focal point, and deservedly so. We have seen better collaboration both in the complexes with the ESETs that have been going on, but as well as across the board in the different subject areas. Like I know for math, math and ELA, we focus on the item authoring projects. And when I was able to collaborate with other teachers from Moanalua, Waipahu, and Kaiser, we put out a booklet of items that our students could practice for the Smarter Balance test. And I don't think any of that would have been possible without teacher collaboration.
Say more about ESET, because what is ESET, first of all? Because our public may not all know what it is.
To CC.
Yeah, so ESET stands for Elevating and Celebrating Effective Teachers in Teaching. It was a way to celebrate the teachers that were in that area, to bring out their voices and what you're speaking to, this sort of like empower them to know that teachers have so much to offer, and thank you for the work that you've been doing and for the great work that you will be doing. And so for me personally, as part of the planning committee, I saw this really organic, just, I can't even describe it, such a powerful feeling that came out of these teachers who felt validated for what they did. We also embedded a lot of teacher-led professional development, as well as like breakout sessions and colleague circles, because teachers just need to sometimes talk with each other and realize that, oh, you and I have the same, like similar issues, let's talk about it and figure out how to solve it, you know, instead of kind of letting it sit inside yourself. So I think ESET really brought a lot of teachers out of that and into a more exciting time, if that makes sense. Yeah.
And I know there's a big initiative around getting teachers more engaged and using social media to share practices with one another and to say you're not alone and to say there's some things that work and don't work and just creating that environment that we can share openly and not be afraid that it may not come out perfectly, right? That unit of study or something you tried, some innovation.
I think it's interesting when you see someone post something to Twitter and you're like, well, that looks like a really cool project. I think I want to try that. And instead of having to jump through hoops to learn about it from, or to see where it was that it came from, you can reach out to them directly. And the DOE teachers have been very helpful in sharing all of their resources. And it just helps, you know, some days, like you said, if it's not going to go perfectly, to have a community of educators to uplift you and to give you suggestions of how next time you might want to do it, but to just pick you up and celebrate you for everything that you do, because teaching is not always easy, but it's always worthwhile.
Right.
I think the message coming from above about the value and importance of teacher collaboration is definitely starting to sink in among the teacher community. I think people are realizing that they have something to say. They're figuring out how to say it, what venues they can best express their messages and their talents and their expertise. I think teacher collaboration, teacher voices, and community voices will have even bigger impact on school design as time goes by, and people at every level of the educational system kind of start to trust the voices that are speaking up and say, okay, they have something to say, we should listen to what they're asking for, or kind of promote their messages even more.
It's been interesting to watch the empowerment model kind of turn the system around to say, if we start with schools being empowered with teacher voice and student voice and school-based leaders really deciding what happens, what's designed at the school level, then the complex in the state is really in the service of supporting those school-based decisions, and teacher leadership is key to that.
We've enjoyed that in the Pro City Waipahu complex, because we get to design our own project-based learning opportunities, and it is super powerful to see students who may not otherwise be engaged be very enthralled in the projects that they're working on, and they're getting to see real-world applications to the content that they're learning. And so our principal and our staff, they never dictate to us what the project could be about. It's always just about support, and our complex has been very supportive, so I'm very, very appreciative.
Yeah, and I think what both of you said too about trusting each other in the process. In Campo Kapolei complex, a lot of our schools are going deeper into who are we, what are we about with the school design, and bringing our staff into that has been a huge part of this kind of process of discovering what are the things that we're going to do together and work on together with this culture of trust and vulnerability. And I see that also on Twitter when we're putting things out that might be challenging, and like you said, we share in the ideas. And I feel the sort of energy that we're all working together, which is really refreshing, I think, as a teacher.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing your perspective. Thanks. Well, Superintendent Kishimoto, your final thoughts on the Empowerment Promise.
Well, Joe, you heard it today. Empowerment is changing professional practice and our climate for our professionals. It's also changing our outcomes. This is our new normal in the Hawaii Public Schools.
Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us for this detailed look at the Empowerment Promise. And our next and final episode will look at the Innovation Promise with a focus on applied learning, design thinking, project-based learning, and creativity. Aloha.